Would you want to go to a party knowing full well that one of the people there doesn't want you to be there? Not really. And the Prime Minister, on behalf of Britain and the Queen, has invited the President of the United States, like all other presidents, to come to Britain, and it would be expected, I would have thought, that he would be able to address the Houses of Parliament in the same way that when our Prime Minister went to America, she addressed Congress. Now, one of the greatest gifts that Britain has given to the world is the parliamentary system, and John Bercow is the Speaker of that esteemed House, and he knows full well that he should be politically neutral, and he has broken that, and that, as everybody knows, is very incorrect of him. Where was all the outrage when America bombed Yemen? Where was all the outrage when President Obama stuck these 7 nations on the watch list? But all of a sudden, when he fulfills the election promises that he made, all of a sudden, everybody's jumping on this bandwagon of opposing President Trump. This is, if you think about it, what we're doing is we're disrespecting the American people, at least 50% of them who voted for President Trump, and we are also disrespecting the office of president. Regardless of what you think of the man or woman who holds that office, you should show respect to that office. And Westminster and Parliament right now are not doing that.
Okay, live from Washington, you're listening to the U.S. President Donald Trump talking about the travel ban. He talked about what, he mentioned one of the clauses of what executive order he signed in terms of what was included in the travel ban, which we'll leave up for lawyers to decide, because at this point, reading it just a phrase would not be applicable towards the bigger picture. But what is very interesting about what he said is the fact that they are taking away our weapons one by one, and he said that the travel ban is a weapon that you need, and we can't let that happen. Let's get a little bit of analysis from Michael Springman. He's an author and former U.S. diplomat who joins us right now. Michael Springman, it appears, at least from this few minutes that Trump spoke, that he's either not wanting to expose the weakness that he showed regarding the bigger picture, which is how he has affected America's standing, the notion of democracy, things of that nature. However, one of the statements, as I mentioned, they are taking away our weapons one by one, and we can't let that happen. Does that mean that he is going to push more to have this travel ban at this point, from what it looks like, that's suspended, that for it is going to be reinstated based on that statement?
Well, I would think so. I mean, it was a remarkably vague statement that I heard just a few minutes ago. But I think that this travel ban is absolute ridiculous behavior and a poorly thought out concept. He picked 7 countries, the 7 countries that have been the targets of the American government for 15 to 20 years in one form or another. And he's continuing the Bush-Obama campaign against Arabs and Muslims. And it sounds like we have Hillary Clinton as president, not Donald Trump, who promised something entirely different. He keeps talking about security and antagonizing Arabs and Muslims for no particular reason other than they come from Yemen or they come from Iran or Iraq, will be almost guaranteed to increase hatred and distrust of the United States. And it's the United States that's for decades has been recruiting, training, and supporting terrorists in conjunction with Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states, Turkey, and Israel and Jordan. It just flabbergasts me to hear anybody say this, and obviously somebody who doesn't even read the newspapers. Even the Washington Post, which is incredibly biased, puts up information from time to time that shows the Americans are at bottom allied with terrorist states. And it makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Well, a lot of things that he does say doesn't make much sense, and it's really interesting how he speaks as if he's still on the campaign trail. But regarding this, the way that he came across on this travel ban, it sounds like the courts have been able to pretty much succeed in preventing him from, well, him and his administration, I guess, from executing this to what they had in mind. Does this mean that he cannot pursue this in any other way at this point? Because he didn't say, his reaction wasn't very severe that he was going to pursue this, except for the fact that he said we can't let that happen. But he wasn't point specific, and he wasn't very aggressive in saying that we're going to go and have this reinstated. And if so, does that mean that other executive orders perhaps may encounter the same kind of resistance as this one did?
Well, some of them can. I mean, he's made some rather sweeping statements, going ahead with the pipeline in North Dakota through the Indian reservation. But I think as far as his travel ban goes, I think he can rework it. I think he and his out-of-touch advisors can look at what the court finally rules and say, well, we can tweak it this way, we can tweak it that way. We can not name a country, we can name an organization or a group or something like this, and essentially achieve the same results.
Okay, thank you for that. We appreciate it. Michael Springman, author and former U.S. diplomat from Washington. Thank you for your statements.
Meanwhile, a U.S. federal appeals court has ended hearing proceedings on a lawsuit demanding the reinstatement of President Donald Trump's travel ban on people from 7 Muslim-majority nations. In a high-stakes hearing before the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in San Francisco, the plaintiff and the defendant made their case on the controversial presidential decree. Both sides were grilled by the judges via telephone. Earlier, a court spokesman said the decision was expected later this week. Now, the latest twist in the legal showdown comes 4 days after a federal judge in the state of Washington blocked the enforcement of Trump's order nationwide, pending a wider legal review. 2 days later, a U.S. appeals court also rejected an urgent government request to reinstate the ban. Trump has vowed to continue the fight to uphold his travel ban, which has provoked national and international outcries. Crossing over to Seattle, Washington, joined by the Vice Chair of the Green Party of Washington State, Jody Grudge. Thank you so much for being with us. Looking at this situation, first of all, are you optimistic that this hold that is in place is going to be there? Because, of course, everyone now is waiting for the appellate court's decision.
I think it will be a while before the court reaches its decision. And I think that there are a great many lawyers and legal organizations that will be working very thoroughly and eagerly to be sure that people retain their rights, including the immigrants. As I've said before, you know, an immigrant is someone who got here after you did. And I think there is a great deal of solidarity on the coast here, as well as in many places of the country, about not just the rights of immigrants, but on those rights as a reflection of the rights of all of us.
Well, the case being made on the side of the government, the U.S. president is saying that at the end, the president has that right if he feels because of the security of the country is at risk. At the end of the day, he actually has that legal right. So it will be interesting to see how it all plays out. But in general, looking at what has happened since then, and we have seen what appears to be a movement growing inside of the United States. I want to talk about that aspect of things and where do you think that that will take it? Do you see people actually in the United States once again becoming more active, more actively involved politically, or is this something just going to be short-lived?
I don't think it will be short-lived. If you look at the strength of the Women's March and the continuations of it, I know here in Seattle we got 1,000 people into Westlake Plaza on about 3 hours' notice. People are very concerned. They are concerned for each other. There is a great deal of solidarity building. I read that the membership in the ACLU is skyrocketing and that some very prominent Republican attorneys have joined the ACLU. There is a real concern in this country now shared by a great many people for the rights of citizens and the rights of people who are here. I don't believe this is going to blow over. I think that we are gearing up for a very determined, concentrated, long haul, and we can keep at this. We know how to do this, and we will.
How do you answer to critics who say that the same liberals, though, were quite quiet, actually, during the 8 years of former U.S. President Barack Obama? And, of course, we saw, actually, statistics had it, I believe, for 2016, more than 20,000 bombs fell on the heads of Muslim countries in 1 year. But we didn't see demonstrations. Is there hypocrisy, or is it because it's affecting Americans? Tell me the difference in your perspective.
I think a lot of people really were sold on the hope that that abounded when Barack Obama was elected into office. I think there was a lot of fairly statesman-like presentation of things that really lulled people into being quiet. Some of the statistics that came out about how many people had been deported did not really register as they should have. In this case now, though, there is so much going on that is so blatantly outrageous that it is difficult to imagine people will either remain quiet or quiet down. I mean, this is a minority president who lost by 3 million votes. His qualifications for office are a little sketchy. His reputation for doing things that benefit him and his family personally are well documented. It's just a fairly outrageous situation on so many counts that it's hard for me to imagine that this isn't helping people become very determined. This is not the kind of country that we expect to live in or want to live in, and we are not taking this lightly in the Green Party and outside the Green Party too.
All right. Okay, well, we're definitely keeping our eyes on what is happening in the United States. Appreciate you being with us. Out of Seattle, Washington, Ms. Jody Grage, Vice Chair, Green Party of Washington State.